Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another watch list. Basically, think of this as a monthly TV guide for me to let you know what and when TV shows that I'm interested in, that maybe you're interested in, are coming out. Like always, in the description down below, I'll include any links to any trailers that might be available about anything that I bring up during this watch list. On September 1st on NBC, we have a new series called Transplant. It's technically new here in the States, but it's kind of not really new because it's actually originally a Canadian show that's now kind of airing in the US on, NBC. But essentially, it's about a doctor from a different country. I think in particular, he's from Syria, and obviously he came to the States for. Well, I'm assuming the show takes place in Canada because it is a Canadian show, but he came there, to kind of get a fresh new start. Obviously, like he tried to get hired at like a hospital, but it didn't work out. But obviously, like an accident happens, and he miraculously saves everyone in that place who got hurt, including like the head of like the hospital, who's played by John Hannah from the Mummy movie. So I was like, holy shit, that's cool. But nevertheless, the doctor decides to hire him, and so it's like, obviously, like for him, he was, both of his parents were doctors, and they died, and obviously he felt like he couldn't do anything to save them. So it seems like he's getting a fresh start for either, like, I'm assuming that's his daughter. I mean, it might be his little sister, but I'm gonna lean more towards it being his daughter, but it's like he wants to get a fresh start for her as well. So it's just this interesting medical drama. I don't watch a lot of medical dramas. I watch some here and there. Since we are talking about, I was about to go on a tangent about something, but it's not really worth it. But just from the trailer alone, it seems very like. I feel very deep and heartfelt, and like, it's just kind of like, trying to do whatever you can for other people, because I think because of his own circumstances, it makes him very like empathetic and sympathetic to like help people. It kind of shows that he's willing to kind of go above and beyond for other people. That accident alone, because they even say in the trailer, he made sure to take care of everyone else before himself, so that he's willing to go above and beyond for other people more so than himself, so I just think that's kind of just the premise behind it all seems interesting, so figured I'd add it to the list. Next, on September 3rd, we have the third season of AP Bio on Peacock. If you're unaware what Peacock is, it is NBC's streaming service. Now, the reason why I also have to specify that, because obviously the previous two seasons aired on NBC, but now it seems like this third season is going to be specifically Peacock. I don't have Peacock. Maybe things will kind of change in that time frame, but it's like, obviously if you've never seen the AP Bio, I highly recommend you check it out. It's a really funny show about it, like obviously like a guy who is like a philosophy major or whatever, who didn't get the job he wanted or positions or the accolades he wanted, and now he's stuck teaching an AP Bio class, but he's not really teaching that class. He's basically convincing his students to do terrible stuff. I think I've talked about the show like on other watch lists, but it just from the trailer alone, I was like, oh, we're going crazier and crazier. And I love that as the show has progressed, his students have become more and more on board with like his shenanigans. Like some are actually like super into it, like, oh yeah, we got your back, boss type of situation. So it just seems like, obviously it's just a fun show, and it just seems like this third season is going to be wild. Like I said, it is going to be solely on Peacock, so do keep that in mind. Next up, also on September 3rd, is this new series on HBO Max called Raised by Wolves. Obviously, like Ridley Scott is connected to it. Not too much. There's a lot in the trailer, but still not enough for you to be like, I know 100% of what's going down. Basically, apparently, like the Earth was destroyed because of a war, and there's this android that is there raising these children. Granted, you don't know the time frame 100% because it's like at some points you see them as like little infants, and then like there's other points where I feel like you see them as maybe teenagers, so who knows like what the grand scheme of the things is. But obviously it's like apparently there's someone from like, we see stuff happening in space, like there's a ship from space coming down to Earth, so like we don't know like the full scale of like, well, what the war was about, who else is on this planet aside from them, because it seems like, oh, she's raising them, teaching them, trying to survive and everything. She even tells them the story of the three little pigs and and the guy that's like, I thought it was kind of interesting how it says like, oh, he's, because she's like, oh, she talks about the big bad wolf, and the dude that seems like he's the big bad wolf, it's like, no, the big bad wolf from the story is her, kind of hence the title of the series. So it's like she's kind of the big bad wolf in this case. So it's like, is it supposed to be like she's actually a bad guy? Like maybe she was created with the best of intentions, but maybe it kind of got lost along the way. She become like too much like her mother lion instincts kind of kicked in, or mother wolf instincts in this case. Or maybe it's like the person who created her in the first place wasn't a good person. So I like I said, you still don't know too much about it, but it seems interesting. It's like, this seems like a heavy science fictional show. It seems quite bloody too, the way she's just kind of like like howls and like blows people up into like nothing, you know, like a red mist. So it seems like an interesting show. Obviously, you know, once again, this is an HBO Max specific. It's not like it's going to air on HBO first and then HBO Max. It's exclusively HBO Max, so do keep that in mind. Next up, also on September 3rd, we have Young Wallander on Netflix. This is a Swedish crime drama series. Basically, a young detective. Well, I don't know if he's necessarily a detective yet, but basically he lives in this particular neighborhood, and then a crime happens where it's like, it's not just like a regular murder. It's like almost like some Saw level shit, because like one of the people has like a grenade in her mouth, and that's what happens. And so obviously it's a complicated thing of like, because Wallander says it himself, like prior to that, like in that community, no one knew he was a cop until that night. So obviously that leads to some complicated nature of like him working his case, but feeling like I don't know if I'm the right person for it. But it's like, you know this neighborhood better than anyone else. These people, you know them the best, so you have to be the one to investigate the case. And it kind of gets him like mixing the crosshairs of like, it seems like kind of like almost like this crime lord, kind of like a, you know, mafioso type of situation where it's like this guy like smuggles guns and stuff like that. So it's like that type of bad guy might be involved in this, and it just seems like a very interesting crime drama. The reason why it's called Young Wallander, because it's actually based on a specific character named Wallander. I think his name's Kurt Wallander. He's actually from a set of, I believe it is still Swedish too, novels. They're very long-running novels, because like they've been running since the 90s. I want to say the series as a whole is done. I think I could be mistaken. They've even adapted this into, I think, movies and TV shows, if I'm not mistaken. Once again, I could be. So this is obviously a much more recent adaptation, but this is specifically him when he's younger, because the other, I don't know about the books, but I know, like, I think the movies and the TV shows are a much older version of him. This is him kind of in his younger days when it comes to his police work and stuff. So kind of getting to see his start. I guess a great example would be kind of like how most recently with Perry Mason on HBO, I think it seems like it's kind of in a similar vein in that regard. So obviously, once again, I've never seen the original, like, I've never read the books because I'm not much of a book reader, but also I've never seen the original, like, adaptations, like I said, whether it be movies or TV shows of this particular property. But just from what I saw, it seemed interesting. So next up on September 4th on Amazon Prime Video, we have The Boys Season 2, which this is probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most. Obviously, I think everyone's super hyped for The Boys Season 2. Obviously, this is like the darkest superhero show that's ever existed. It's basically a anti-superhero show. Obviously, just from what we've seen from the trailers, obviously continuing where things left off in season 1, kind of obviously, like, in particular, stuff about Homelander not being the hero that everyone thinks he is, as well as, you know, Billy's connection and just how his story kind of intertwines with Homelander. Obviously, the boys are on the run because, like, everyone's like, oh, like, they're at the top of the most wanted list. Obviously, how this whole superhero thing has expanded. Obviously, new people like what's her name, Stormfront, her kind of leading the charge of a whole bunch of superheroes. They're being super terrorists, you know, terrorists with super abilities. Vault kind of being in the middle of all this. There's a lot of trailers out. I've tried to only see the more, like, I saw the Stormfront one, the teaser, and like the main final trailer. So other than that, I've kind of avoided the other trailers because I just want to kind of experience things when they get there. But obviously, I'm very, very excited from this season, just from the trailers alone. Just, it seems things are just as weird, and it's wild, as bloody, and it's crazy. So I'm super, super excited to see what goes down this season. Also on September 4th on Netflix, we have this new series called Away, and it's basically a drama about, like, kind of basically astronauts. They're on a mission to go to Mars, but obviously it's a very, like, I think a very human story about, like, you know, obviously it's like you basically going in this mission for like 3 years and you're having to leave your entire world behind. I mean, not in the literal sense. Well, not just in the literal sense of you're leaving Earth, but also like they're leaving their families. And it seems like it's kind of a more international thing, because it seems like there's people from like all over the world kind of involved with this particular space program. And so it's the struggles of, you know, what you left behind and still, you know, pining for it, but also being a part of this mission, you know, looking to the future and that balance and the complications that come along with it. Everyone's kind of got their own struggles. Like, no one's like more, it's supposed to be a thing like no one's more important than anyone else. Like, oh, your situation isn't special. Like, everyone else aboard this is literally doing the same thing. A lot of people had to leave other stuff behind. It's got Hilary Swank in it, for example. Like, it seems like she's the one that a lot of others kind of look at like, why do you think you're special? Just because, you know, because apparently, like, we saw in the trailer, like, she kind of froze in a moment she shouldn't have froze, you know? So just, I think it's going to be, like, a very, like, interesting, like, it's not, it's, obviously the crux of it is the, you know, the space exploration, going to Mars and everything, but like, I think at the heart of it is just going to be a human story, or just kind of the connections about people and, you know, wanting to get back to your family no matter what, and kind of the dangers of this whole thing. It seems like an interesting drama that I felt like adding to the list. Next up on September 9th on Hulu, we had this new series called Woke. Essentially, there's this dude who kind of does like comics and stuff like that, and he's kind of pretty popular to the point like people are like trying to adapt his stuff into like movies and stuff like that. And basically an incident happens where he gets accosted by the cops, even kind of taken down, like they're being very rough with him and stuff like that. But then the way the trailer's cut to make it seem like, oh, like they're just kind of like, oh, I guess we got the wrong guy, whatever, and bounce. And it's just kind of like he got treated that way because it's not only because he's black, but also just like, oh, just because like, oh, all black people look the same, you know? And so it's interesting because like, obviously I went into this thinking like it is a comedy, but I had read a little bit about the premise. I was like, is this really a comedy? And so it's basically, it seems like it's a kind of dark comedy, but probably like more like a dramedy, more so than anything, where like this guy who did a lot of comics and stuff like that, he more so focused on, well, I say comics, but I think he's more like cartoonist kind of comic type of thing. But regardless, like the fact of the matter is he always wanted to do stuff light. It's like he never wanted his stuff to be kind of something like political. Like, I don't want my work to just have to mean something. I just want it to be kind of light and fun. But I think that's kind of the whole point of like, you kind of went so laissez-faire about that. And the fact of the matter is he let a lot of stuff that borderlines on that racism level. Because like one dude's like, oh, you're that particular person. I didn't realize you'd be, and he's looking and it's like tall. It's like, no, you meant to say you didn't think I was going to be black. So it's a situation where, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that he kind of let slide that he probably shouldn't have, and I think it's almost kind of everything kind of coming full circle in a certain regard. At least that's how some people kind of paint it, like almost like you let this happen. So it's like, I guess like I said, he kind of let a lot of people kind of run him over. Like I said, he just let a lot of stuff slide. But it's like now he's kind of woke in the sense that like now inanimate objects like come to life to him. So there's almost like this weird like, wait, is something wrong with me? Like, and now I think it's all these inanimate objects are saying like, oh, you can finally hear us because of what happened to you. So it's a thing of like, I think his whole perspective on a lot of stuff is changing, and he's kind of not going to take a lot of people, like it seems like he's not going to let a lot of people's shit kind of slide. And I think it's going to be that, I think it's going to be a very interesting, I guess introspective might be the word, kind of take on just kind of like, I think, you know, this black, you know, a black man's experience in this world, kind of like dealing with like a lot of the racism that maybe like I said, he let slide beforehand, and kind of recognizing like, nah, I should call you out for your like shit. And like maybe the show kind of warps things to be like, oh, like he says, this person says something in a more colorful way, but it's like, no, in actuality, you're actually saying this specific thing. Or I'm just curious, just from the trailer alone, it seemed really interesting. So thought I'd check it out. On September 10th on Netflix, we had this new series called the Dune Chronicles, I think, or maybe Idhun Chronicles. It actually has a different name. It's like, I'm going to butcher it. So I'm not even going to say, because it's actually a Spanish title, because this is actually like a Spanish anime, actually. Obviously, it's just getting like international distribution on Netflix. But just from the trailer alone, I read a little bit about it, not too much about the plot, but it's actually based on, I think, a trilogy of, you know, novels. Basically, there's Earth, and then there's like another world where magic exists. Well, this kid from Earth, his home gets attacked, his parents get killed because like this guy was sent from this, the magical world, there's a tyrant who runs it, who sent some dude here to kind of kill anyone or bring back anyone that has ties to this world that kind of escaped to Earth. And so it's a situation of like he gets dragged to this magical world, and I think it's about, you know, discovering the truth about like, you know, why his parents were targeted while working with these others who are kind of trying to defeat this tyrant and trying to, you know, fight to survive. It's like I said, it just seems like a very interesting like fantasy anime. Obviously, like I said, aside from what we get in the trailer, like I said, I didn't read too much plot wise, so I don't know the full scope of everything going on, but just from what we saw, it seemed really interesting. Even though this is you know, obviously it's an anime, so obviously there's going to be like multiple dubs like all around, but it seems like a very, you know, interesting series. Like I said, it's dropping internationally on the same day, I think. On Netflix wise, they're distributing it internationally, but it seemed like an interesting anime that I figured add it to the list. Next up, on September 16th on FXX, we have the 11th season of Archer. Obviously, I'm super excited to have the 11th season of Archer. I recently went back and kind of binged on the last 2 seasons because I'd fallen behind. But obviously this is picking up after like all the previous 3 seasons where Archer was in a coma, and it was basically the theme of the style of the show basically changed every season. Like one was like, the last one was in space, if I remember correctly. So it's just interesting to obviously be back kind of, Archer's awake from his coma. It's actually because this is the first season that doesn't have a subtitle and everything, and him kind of getting associated, back to it, like back to life. And obviously like everything's kind of changed. A lot of people, have kind of changed. For example, like Cheryl's like, oh no, that's the old me. And Archer being like, wow, you used to be so much fun, because she doesn't want to drink on the job or do drugs and stuff like that. So kind of being acclimated to like the new things, like, Cyril being like buff and stuff, and he's like, stop being a dick, kind of flexing. Yes, you finally exercised, you don't have to flaunt it, dick. So the fact of the matter is kind of getting associated with everything. Just from what we got from the trailer, it's like, if you loved Archer before, it seems like it's just more Archer to love. So I'm very excited to see just like the crazy shenanigans and the crazy shit, on the full scale of everything that goes down, this season, and just seeing like how much has changed since Archer's been away. Because he was in a coma for like, wasn't it like 3 years? I think, because they bring it up at the end of last season, because that's when he wakes up from a coma. But I think like the 3 seasons, the 3 years he was in of the show have been the 3 years and within the confines of the actual show itself. I think I could be mistaken, but either way, like I said, I'm very excited to see what's in store for us this season. And finally, on September 17th on Netflix, we have this new series called Dragon's Dogma. Now, I'm coming into this knowing very little about it, because I've heard this game get brought up from time to time. They even bring it up in the trailer. Obviously, this is based on the video game of the same name, in particular being a Capcom game. But like I said, I've heard some people kind of bring it up and talk about it, but I've never really looked too much into it, so I don't even know what it plays like video game wise. But it seems like a very interesting series where basically, well, anime actually, because it seems like they're going with the anime style. I mean, it makes sense, this being based on Capcom and everything, or that doesn't really mean anything, I guess. But the fact of the matter is, it's about a guy seeking revenge because a dragon attacked his village and basically killed his wife and his child, maybe. And so he joins up with this lady to seek out revenge. It doesn't seem like she's 100% human. I don't know what she is, because she's like, oh, you can call me whatever. And he kind of gives her a name and she's like, fine. But it seems like she's kind of got like magic. So it's like this like dark fantasy. It's very bloody. Obviously, like I've never seen it, but obviously it feels like it's kind of got that vibe to it. It's like the Castlevania anime on Netflix. It feels like it's kind of got a little bit of that vibe. It seems it's going to be like very dark, very bloody. I'm sure very reflective of the game. Looking at it, it kind of reminds me of The Witcher and Monster Hunter. Granted, I've never played The Witcher game and I've never played Monster Hunter, but I've seen obviously some of the game for both. But obviously also, like when it comes to The Witcher, I've seen the show on Netflix. So it seems like it's kind of got a vibe of like that, kind of like that to a certain extent. It definitely feels very Monster Hunter-ish because there's all these other monsters, and mainly it seems like he's going after the dragon. And like I said, it's just a tale of revenge, like other characters he meets along the way. Like like I said, I'm going into this knowing very little, but just from what I saw, it seemed very interesting. So if you're looking for something on the anime side of things, a little darker, a little bloodier, it seems like this might be right up your alley. Especially if I'm curious how people who've actually played the game are going to feel about it. But regardless, I'm interested to see what it's all about. And so that brings this month's watch list to an end. Like always, if there's something that's coming out that maybe I wasn't aware of, that maybe you're aware of, that you think maybe me or someone else might be interested in, don't be afraid to leave it in the comments down below. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.